Welcome to this ET Now special. It's a big exclusive. I've got the Chairman and Managing Director of Spicejet with me, Mr. Ajay Singh. Thank you so much for talking to ET Now. You're breaking your silence. You're giving this exclusive interview to ET Now in the aftermath of India's oldest private airline, Jet Airways, temporarily shutting down. It brings opportunities for Spicejet. While it is a moment that you have also said is a moment of sadness, it certainly brings about opportunities for Spicejet. You're looking to take over some of the fleet of Jet Airways, some of the slots. How big an opportunity is it for Spicejet?
Well, firstly, I'd like to reiterate that it is indeed an extremely sad moment for the entire aviation sector. And an airline that we were all so proud of, a brand that India was so proud of, one of the finest global brands in aviation, Jet Airways, for that airline to suspend operations after 25 years of being in business must give us all pause. And we must reflect on why this is happening repeatedly in our country. This happened to Kingfisher, it's happened to numerous other smaller airlines.
You turned around Spicejet, it was happening to Spicejet as well.
It was happening to Spicejet as well. And so we really need to reflect on this and come up with longer term solutions that ail the aviation sector. You know, increasingly, aviation, as you know, is a global industry. We are competing with global players. Increasingly, Indian carriers are flying not only within India but outside of India. We have to compete with all international airlines that have a completely and radically different cost structure from what India has. So we need to you know, shed this mindset that we have in India, that flying is somehow for the rich and therefore needs to be taxed at a very high rate. Nowhere in the world, nowhere in the aviation world is fuel taxed at 40% like it is in our country. Nowhere in the world is import of services taxed the way we tax the import of services. There are numerous other charges.
But Mr. Ajay Singh, would it be fair to only blame fuel? You know, the writing was on the wall back in September 2018 that Jet Airways was headed for trouble. It was far more than turbulence. Our banks did not act. You have turned around Spicejet. Yesterday, the Jet CEO Vinay Dubey said he was only looking for the kind of intervention that Spicejet got back in 2014, whether it was to do with fuel and other things like that. What do you have to say?
Well, we got no intervention at all. To be fair, I mean, what happened with Spicejet was that we did not ask for a rupee of concession, not from the government. We did not ask for any loans from the government. We did not ask for any deferral in payments. We, at Spicejet, all our vendor payables, which at that time were really large, they were about 2,500 crores. We had a plan to pay those back over a period of 2 years. We had all the vendors buy into that plan, and we actually paid them in advance of the time that we had committed to them. So there was no intervention other than moral support of the government of India in 2014.
I want to talk about the future now, Mr. Ajay Singh. You know, we've been reading about how you have taken over, you have made representations to take over the fleet of Jet Airways, slots of Jet Airways. Yesterday, the government has come out in clarification that this is only going to be temporary in nature. 3-month leases are going to be signed. Does that mean the government believes that Jet Airways could perhaps be airborne again in 3 months?
Well, honestly, we have to give them the best possible chance. And I think it's only fair that we give them the best possible chance of survival and you know, a rebirth. It is an extremely difficult and uphill task at this point. You know, they have lost most of their planes and they have lost a lot of credibility. I think the dues that are payable both to the banks as well as to the vendors are extremely large. But you know, our best wishes are certainly with them, and we do hope that they are able to dig themselves out of this hole. As far as Spicejet is concerned, we are motivated by the fact that today there is a real gap in capacity. There is a real shortage of capacity in the Indian aviation market. Consumers are really suffering. Fares are extremely high. Some stations have just got completely knocked out of the aviation map. There are no flights at all to certain stations. So it's a very dismal situation. And I think it's for all of us, including Spicejet, to add whatever capacity that we can to try and reduce the extent and the pain that we are seeing in this whole space. Also remember that suddenly there are these thousands of people at Jet, 17,000 employees who find themselves without a job. And we feel that we owe it to the sector and to these people that we try and absorb as many of them as we possibly can. And we have already absorbed close to now 1,000 people, and we will continue to try and do more.
You absorbed 1,000 Jet employees. You want to build capacity. You've started to build capacity. Can you share with us how much capacity you have been able to ramp up? How many of the planes you're about to take? What kind of routes you're looking at?
Well, for the moment, we have added 5 aircraft which go into service on Friday. We are adding a significant number of aircraft in the coming days. We expect to add close to 40 aircraft in the next few weeks. Our thought is that we will take this capacity and use it where it's needed the most. So where there has been a sudden shortage of capacity, that's where we will try and use this. We are also in touch with the DGCA. There is a committee which has been appointed to look at this whole slots distribution and so on. So we are talking to them. We are talking to the airports to see where the gaps really are, and of course our commercial team is assessing and trying to figure out where exactly the largest gaps are, and that's where we are going to put in our flights. So from our perspective, of course we will take some of the space that has been vacated by Jet, and honestly, even if Jet was to revive, and we really hope that they do, we still believe that it will be a much slimmer version of Jet.
So you've already absorbed 1,000. You're indicating that perhaps you're going to be absorbing more. You're looking at capacity addition. 5 new planes will be with you by Friday. Mr. Ajay Singh, any direction from the government that first you have to ramp up domestic capacity? For example, Air India built a case that it wants to take over Jet's Delhi, London, Delhi, Mumbai, Singapore, Mumbai, the Dubai route. Are you doing the same? Are you looking at international routes or only
we are trying to do
domestic?
both, but the focus is first on the domestic routes because that's where the largest problem exists today. I fully support Air India's move to try and take some of Jet's wide-body planes and fly them, because remember that we had only 2 airlines that were flying long-haul international routes out of India. We only had Air India and we had Jet Airways, and with Jet Airways going down, I think it will be really nice if Air India is able to take some of that capacity and fly Indian passengers to long-haul destinations. Why should we leave it only to foreign carriers to fly Indian passengers around the world?
So having said that, you're not looking at it? You're not looking at these wide-bodied opportunities?
I think all of us need to look at it. Our business,
because that's the real gold mine of Jet, isn't it?
Look, our business has so far been only narrow body, but I think not only Spicejet, every Indian carrier needs to take a look at how we can make it financially viable and profitable for ourselves to take Indian passengers across the world. We cannot leave it to foreign airlines to do this. We cannot leave it to foreign hubs to distribute Indians around the world. We need to create global hubs within our own country. There is no reason why the airports of Delhi and Mumbai and Hyderabad and Bangalore should not be global hubs. And for that to happen, we need Indian carriers to be strong enough to be able to take our passengers throughout the world, non-stop into Europe, into the US and other such places.
Mrs. Ajay Singh, I do understand that of course airfares are a supply of demand. There is a shortage which has been created, but there is also consumer angst. Then maybe the other carriers didn't rise to the occasion. They used this, capacity shortage, the downing of Jet Airways as an opportunity for airfares that went skyrocketing. We saw a huge surge. Why did that take place? Did none of you actually consider that maybe, we could not look at the bottom line, we could perhaps try and absorb a little bit? No, that's not fair to expect.
Look, like you said, it is a question of supply and demand. You cannot keep artificially depressing fares because, if there is a demand, the fares will go up.
Delhi, Bombay was 30,000 rupees sometimes.
The solution to this really is to put in more capacity. And that's what we are trying to do. On the most expensive routes today, if you put in more capacity, the fares will come down, and you will see this happen. We are in a high season in May and June. And fares normally do become a lot higher than they are, than they are in, let's say, a March or a September. But you put in capacity, the fares will moderate and come to some, reasonable level. And that's what Spicejet's intention is, and that's what we are trying to do. And it's not only Spicejet. You will find that other airlines will also add capacity in this period.
But talk to the consumers, Spicejet, talk to the consumers of Indian Airlines at the moment. When do you expect rationalization of FS?
As soon as there is more capacity, and we hope that can happen over the months of May and June.
Because they've gone up almost 40%.
Of course, and typically in high season they would go up anyway, but not by so much. And so you will see a moderation as soon as there is capacity, and this should happen in May and June. And remember also that several of our planes that are grounded today, the MAX aircraft, should be back in operation in June and July. So that will help as well.
In June, July, you're expecting your fleet of the 737 MAX to be back in the air. Mr. Ajay Singh, how are conversations with Boeing going? I'm talking now from a shareholder's perspective. It must have taken a big toll on the balance sheet. It took a toll on your operations. Are you expecting any compensation from Boeing?
Oh, certainly. I think there is little doubt that there will be compensation from Boeing. But at this time when we really needed the capacity, when there was an airline which was going down, it would have really helped to have the MAX fly. It is a great aircraft. We were very happy to fly it. We flew it without incident for 6 months. But of course, safety is paramount, and if a fix is required, it needs to be done before we can fly it again. And we know that Boeing has found a solution and has fixed the problem. And hopefully the certification can happen quickly and we can start to fly the plane.
So you're not looking to replace that fleet at all?
At this time, we are not looking to replace the fleet. We are confident that Boeing will compensate all the carriers that have lost a great deal of money.
Have they shared how they will work out the compensation? How much it will be?
Not as yet, but it will happen. And at this time, our focus is to support them, to ensure that there is a solution found to the problem as soon as possible, and that certification can happen.
Mr. Ajay Singh, I want to get back to Jet Airways as well. You turned around Spicejet. Did you ever consider submitting an expression of interest when the process was opened by the lenders for Jet Airways?
We looked at the numbers. We were approached by several stakeholders in this process, and we did take a look at the numbers. We thought that it was beyond Spicejet's ability to do something with Jet Airways. We felt that the gap was too large. It was not the 8,000 or 8,500 crores that you read about in the media.
How much is it?
In our estimate, the gap was closer to 25,000 crores. And
25,000 crores.
If you look at
this is what the asset liability mismatch?
So if you look at the vendor payables, if you look at the advances that they had taken on ticket sales, and if you look at all the debts, if you added all that up, it was close to 25,000 crores. And we felt that was a gap that was not within the ability of Spicejet. No matter that Spicejet, that Jet Airways is a wonderful brand and had a wonderful network and had wonderful people, we felt that gap was just too large for us, a small airline, to try and work on.
So I just think that's a huge revelation that's coming in. It's a big headline. You're saying the gap is 25,000 crores. Could the corollary of this be that first 25,000 crore rupees needs to be pumped in to get Jet back in the skies?
No, not at all. It's that's the total gap. I would think that in our estimate, the amount of cash that was required was close to about 11,000 crores, and that was what was required up front for this to be a viable operation. In our view, it was very tough. Of course, there could be other players who would be strong enough to take to put in that kind of money and do something with what is clearly a wonderful brand.
What kind of a messaging has this sent out to the rest of the aviation industry around the world?
I think the message is not a good one at all. To have an aviation failure every 5 years in India is not at all a good message, especially in a market which is growing as rapidly as ours is. In India, the underlying demand is so strong that we've been growing at 15-20% every year. We start flights under the Udan scheme in all sorts of destinations where there have never been flights before, and you start the flights and they fill up. So the underlying sentiment and demand is extremely strong. At the same time, we have to get the economics right. We cannot have such a high cost base which leaves such a thin margin for airlines to operate that it becomes impossible as soon as there is an external shock like oil going up to 80, 85 or $90. There is so much pressure that the weaker players with a higher cost structure just go belly up. So we need to find a solution, and as a nation we have to understand that aviation is something which is a huge force multiplier for the economy, both the national economy as well as the economy of the states, and we cannot keep taxing aviation like we do. Aviation fuel has to be included under the ambit of the GST. The states in the interim have to look at reducing the local sales tax. It's not, you're not collecting a huge amount of money through these taxes. You're just creating, you're making it extremely difficult to run an airline
and
in
this
our
entire
country.
issue has been politicized as well now. For example, look what the Shiv Sena has done in Mumbai. It has protested outside the Jet Airways office. It's also election season. There are a lot of questions being raised. Why didn't the government intervene? Why didn't the banks take over? What do you make of this entire clarion call that the government should have intervened?
No, I think ultimately the government will look at it from their perspective, and I think for them what is most important is consumer interest. They would not, in my opinion, worry as much about a private company or its promoters. They would, if there is their first concern would be the consumers, which is what they are trying to show here by trying to impress upon all the carriers to add capacity as soon as is possible. As far as the banks are concerned, of course they've lent money and they need to protect their investment. So they will try and find a solution that protects their investment, and that's what they're trying to do.
Do you think it's a given that they'll be looking at a large haircut? For example, you said 11,000 crore rupees upfront is needed. Would that include a large haircut to the banks?
I think that if a solution is to be found at all, a large haircut would certainly be a part of any calculation. I think it's a very, very uphill task right now. What is being attempted is a very uphill task. I mean, a really strong player comes in and wants to do this, perhaps, but it's an uphill task, and I think any solution that is found will certainly entail a significant amount of a haircut from both the banks as well as the operational creditors.
So what do you make of all those calls and suggestions that should it be nationalized? Should the government take over? Should it be merged with Air India?
I think that's beyond my competence to comment on. Really, it's for the government to see. But it's tough. I think, for the government to be in a services business is extremely tough. You can put the best people in public sector enterprises, but aviation is such a dynamic space that you need to take decisions really, really quickly, and the government system is just not geared to taking decisions so very quickly. So for everything, if you need to follow a tender process, if you are constantly looking over your shoulder to see if the agencies are going to question the decisions that you make. No management, no matter how good, can operate an airline under those circumstances. And let me tell you that my friend Mr. Ashwani Lohani is an excellent CMD of Air India. But the government system is not geared to running a services enterprise as dynamic as aviation. So any talk of nationalizing even more airlines, I think is probably unwise.
But then, Mr. Ajay Singh, why did we see the Air India auction fail? Was it again because maybe like in the Jets case, too much money was needed upfront? Does the government perhaps now and the banks also start need to looking at a piecemeal approach to these airlines, whether it's Air India or Jet Airways?
I think in Air India's case, again, the gap was extremely large. The liabilities that were sought to be transferred to the new buyer were large. And there were certain other conditions. When we took a look at it, I mean, again, we were too small to really be taking a look at large enterprises like Air India. But we felt that the conditions were not appropriate. And also remember that at the time when the auction process went forward, the external environment was extremely difficult. The oil price was high, the rupee had
Timing
dropped,
was off.
and so the timing was off as well.
Mr. Ajay Singh, give us a little behind the scenes approach. Were there any meetings that took place between the chairman of all the airlines? Did Mr. Naresh Goyal ever reach out to you? Did the government ever reach out to all of you? Did you guys have meetings together to say how to, in the larger interest, save Jet Airways?
I think we meet all the time. We have discussions all the time. There was no specific meeting on how to save Jet Airways, but I think the problems are well known to all, and we have been talking about those problems as the Federation of Indian Airlines and as private airlines, individual airlines talking to government. And it's not that the government doesn't understand. They fully understand the problem and they are extremely supportive. The Civil Aviation Ministry is an extremely supportive ministry, and everybody has been trying to work hard. But with this new GST legislation, we need consensus between the center and all the states. That's not always easy to find. We are working towards it. We are hopeful that we can take up some of these issues again in July once the new government is formed.
Mr. Ajay Singh, in this entire Jet Airways saga, what we also saw was the Spicejet share price, for example, hit a 52-week high. You've also signed a code-sharing agreement with Emirates. Is it going to stay at code-sharing? Could we see a larger collaboration? Is that also that's going to be needed by the Indian carriers to forge, just to be more relevant globally, just to make sure that their interests are protected globally as well?
I think increasingly Indian carriers will both collaborate with and compete with foreign airlines. And of course, Emirates is one of the finest airlines in the world. We wanted to give access to our passengers in India to a larger global network, and Emirates has 125 global destinations that suddenly our passengers can access. So somebody who's sitting in Jabalpur or in Dharamshala can now buy a single ticket to San Francisco or New York or to Sydney and just fly there. So we think that is tremendously useful, but which is not to say that over time Indian carriers will not compete.
So you're not looking at FDI, you're not looking at maybe going beyond code sharing with Emirates?
Well, we'll see how things pan out, of course, but at this time we are not really looking at any investments. We are looking more at collaborative arrangements with Emirates and other such carriers.
So you're looking at, are you talking to other carriers as well for code sharing?
We are talking to other carriers, and hopefully we'll announce some
share
other.
With us which
not at this time, but because of course that's covered by confidentiality. But of course we are talking to some others, and the idea is to increase our reach and have our passengers travel in an efficient manner throughout the world.
Mr. Ajay Singh, if you're building capacity, you're going to fly to new destinations, you're going to need money to do all of that. Are we going to see fundraising at Spicejet?
At this time, we think we are pretty comfortably placed. We are a profitable company, and we believe that at this time we don't need to raise funds. But of course, at a future date, if we think that there is any requirement, we do it.
That'll be by debt, you think?
At this time, there is no requirement to raise money at all. We feel in the immediate short to medium term. But if there is a requirement, we'll see.
This week, we saw the air traffic data, the latest air traffic data that came out. You're now India's second largest private airline. You've got a 20% market share. But it would seem that Indigo has gained a lot more compared to you when it comes to the grounding of jet. Why does the data show that, and how are you going to look to maybe gain more market share?
Well, perhaps Indigo, firstly being the largest carrier and having capacity, was able to take more of the more advantage of the jet situation. We have the ability to fly jets grounded aircraft. So that gives Spicejet a significant advantage in terms of taking up some of the space.
How many planes are you totally targeting to get from Jet? What is your representation to the government?
Well, honestly, we will try and get as many aircraft as we possibly can.
But how many have you applied for?
At this time, we have applied for about 30 aircraft. We will do as many as we possibly can and try and close the demand gap as much as we possibly can.
With that, Mr. Singh, I'd like to thank you for taking the time and
so
joining us on ET. Thank you.
Thank you.